Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we are going to explore what Spring Boot is and how it can simplify the development of Spring-based applications. Spring Boot is an open source framework that is designed to make it easier to create standalone production-ready applications using Spring Framework. It helps in reducing the amount of boilerplate code that we need to write, and by providing many features, it makes development, testing, and deployment of the application faster and more efficient. In today's video, we will cover the basics of Spring Boot, including its key features and benefits. We will also compare it to traditional Spring to see how it streamlines the development process. By end of this video, you should have a good understanding of why Spring Boot is a valuable tool for modern application development, particularly for building microservices. So let's dive in and start with the overview of what Spring Boot is. So what exactly is Spring Boot? It is an open source framework, but it is not just any framework. It's a game changer in how we build Spring applications. Its primary goal is to simplify the process of creating standalone and production-ready Spring applications. Spring Boot takes care of a lot of heavy lifting for you, so you can focus on what really matters, your application's business logic. One of the key ways Spring Boot achieves this is by reducing the amount of boilerplate configuration required in a Spring application. You no longer need to spend countless hours setting up your project or configuring your environment. Instead, Spring Boot provides sensible defaults and auto configurations that work right out of the box. This means you can spend less time wrestling with configuration files and more time building the awesome features of your application. So all in all, Spring Boot allows you to focus on what you do best, solving real-world problems. It takes care of the rest, allowing you to create robust production-ready application with ease. Now let us explore why should you consider using Spring Boot for your next project. First reason is simplified setup. Spring Boot adopts a convention over configuration approach that drastically reduces the amount of boilerplate code that you need to write. This means you can get started with your project with minimal setup and efforts. Instead of spending hours configuring your application, Spring Boot provides defaults and auto configuration that allows you to focus on developing your application's core functionality. Next is standalone application development and deployment. Traditionally, applications were deployed on external servers, which was a very complex and time-consuming process. With Spring Boot, this hassle is eliminated. You no longer need to worry about configuring and managing the external servers. Instead, you can package your application as a self-contained executable jar. That jar contains everything needed to run your application. Spring Boot provides the capability to create standalone applications. It means your application can run independently without the need of any external servers. This is possible due to the embedded servers like Tomcat Jetty or Undertow, which are included within Spring Boot. This approach not only simplifies the deployment but also enhances the portability. You can easily deploy your Spring Boot application to any environment that supports Java without the need of additional server setup or configuration. Spring Boot is designed with production use in mind. It provides a number of features that helps in management and monitoring of the application. With features such as health checks, application metrics, and externalized configuration, Spring Boot simplifies the management and monitoring of the application in production. These features can be easily integrated into your application with minimal configuration. That ensures that your application is robust, reliable, and easy to manage. Now let us explore how Spring Boot facilitates rapid development through its auto configuration and starter dependencies. Spring Boot is known for its quick development process by allowing developers to focus on business logic implementation. Spring Boot's auto configuration feature analyzes your project's class path and automatically configures your application based on the libraries and dependencies it finds. This means you no longer need to spend time manually configuring components like data source, web servers, or security settings. Spring Boot's intelligent defaults and auto configuration handle much of the setup for you, enabling you to hit the ground running with minimal effort. Spring Boot provides a vast collection of starter dependencies. These starters are the collection of commonly used libraries and configurations, allowing you to add features like web application, database access, or security with just a few lines of code. By using starter dependencies, you can accelerate development and reduce time and effort required to set up your project. Suppose you want to create a REST API application. For that, you just need to add Spring Boot Starter Web in the dependency list. It will automatically configure embedded servlet container like Tomcat. It also enables controller, handler mapping, and view resolver for MVC type applications. It also enables support for different annotations which are required for HTTP request handling. Similarly, we have starter dependencies for other areas as well, like connecting to a database, aspect-oriented programming, security, etc. Now let's compare Spring Boot with the traditional Spring and understand the key differences between these two approaches. In traditional Spring applications, setting up and configuring involves a lot of XML or Java-based configuration. Developers are required to manually wire the dependencies, configure beans, and define various aspects of the application's behavior. This process was time consuming and error prone, especially for the large and complex projects. Spring Boot takes a different approach to setup and configure. It embraces the convention over configuration. By using smart defaults and auto configuration, it simplifies the setup process. With Spring Boot, much of the configuration is handled automatically. This reduces the amount of boilerplate code and configuration required, allowing developers to get up and running with the minimal effort. Another area where Spring Boot differs from traditional Spring is dependency management. In traditional Spring applications, managing dependencies involve manually specifying and managing each library and its version. This can be cumbersome, especially when dealing with transitive dependencies and version conflicts. Let us try to understand what are transitive dependencies. Suppose when you are including a library, let's say library A as a dependency in your project, that becomes a direct dependency. Now, if library A itself depends on another library, let's say library B to function properly, then library B becomes a transitive dependency of your project. You haven't explicitly included library B in your project, but it is required for library A, which is a dependency of your project. So library B is transitively brought into your project. Managing such dependencies was a big pain for developers. Spring Boot simplifies the dependency management through the use of starter dependencies. Starters are curated sets of dependencies that encapsulates common functionality such as web, data access, or security. By including a starter dependency in your project, you automatically get all the necessary libraries and configurations required for that functionality. This makes dependency management more streamlined and less error prone compared to the traditional Spring applications. Spring Boot offers the convenience of embedded servers for running applications. With traditional Spring, deploying applications typically involves deploying them on external servlet containers like Tomcat. In contrast, Spring Boot allows you to package your application as a self-contained executable jar, which includes an embedded server. This eliminates the need for external server deployment and simplifies the deployment process. We have already discussed how Spring Boot helps in production-ready features and rapid development, which was not feasible with the traditional Spring applications. Now, just to summarize, while traditional Spring provides a lot of flexibility and control, Spring Boot focuses on simplicity, rapid development, and production readiness, making it an excellent choice for modern application development. That's it for our introduction to Spring Boot. We hope this video helped you to understand what Spring Boot is and why you should use it. We have seen its key features and benefits and how it compares to traditional Spring applications. In the next video, we will dive into setting up your development environment and creating your first Spring Boot application. Thank you for joining us in this Spring Boot introduction. We hope you found the information helpful. We value your thoughts, questions, and feedback. Please share them in the comments below. Your feedback helps us improve our content and ensures that we address the topic and questions that matters most to you. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss any update. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next time. Till then, happy coding.